Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
What are your trademark scary stories? You know, the ones you bring up as soon as story time approaches. I have one in particular. It's not the scariest, but it sure scared me. And two other people that also witnessed it. I've been seeing a lot of scary stories on here, and I think I might reach out to a few people with my story, as I noticed shadow figures are pretty popular on 4chan. I am going to try to create a picture in your head. Upstairs we had 3 rooms. The room on the far left was a bathroom. The middle room had the bunk beds where my sister and I slept, and the room farthest to the right was my parents' room. My sister and I occasionally see a silhouette of a man just leaning back and falling into our parents' bed. We never told each other about seeing this figure until the day it was brought up, after we both saw it at the same time. My parents went away for a couple hours and my sister and I were home alone. I was maybe 8 and she was about 16. She was babysitting me, so the easiest thing for us to do and not get into any trouble was to watch some TV. I forget what we were watching, but it had our interest. I mentioned to my sister that I was hungry, so she decided to make us something. Our downstairs also had 3 rooms. The first room had our couch and TV. The second had the staircase going upstairs, a smaller TV, and a staircase leading to the basement. And the third room was our kitchen, where we were at the time we saw it. We had an arched doorway and an overall small kitchen, so we could see through the doorway almost anywhere we went. My sister was by the counter and I was standing behind her. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it again. My heart dropped. It was sitting on our couch on the far left corner with the remote in his hand. I told my sister about it and she slowly backed up to where I was. I told her not to look directly at it or she wouldn't see it. She also saw it in the corner of her eye and was also pretty damn frightened. I turned my head towards the room and it disappeared. My sister and I were in shock that we actually saw it together. This is when we told each other about our previous experiences with the silhouette. We told our parents when they came home, and of course they didn't really believe us. They said the same thing all parents say: we had an overactive imagination. She claims to this day that the channel was changed and that the figure had wings. I don't remember all of the details from that night, so I just go with her description. About a year or so later, my friend, whom I never told this story to, was sleeping over. My sister slept downstairs with us. It was the average sleepover: popcorn, a couple movies, and scary stories. We had multiple blankets all spread out on the floor to sort of cushion us as we slept. We had a ton of pillows surrounding us. Towards the end of the night, about 11:30 or so, me and my friend started a little pillow fight. We were laughing and having a fun time. Surprisingly, we didn't wake my parents up. My friend gets a weird look on his face and tells me to stop, and that he doesn't want to fight anymore. He tells us he saw a black shadow figure shaped like a man in the corner of his eye standing in our middle room. My sister and I just look at each other, and then we both tell him that we have seen it also, multiple times before. After a few months passed, me and my sister were still curious, and we found out that my parents bought their bed from one of my mother's friends whose father passed away in the bed. That is where we originally started seeing the figure. We don't know if that is it for sure, but it seems like that could be an explanation to what we have been seeing.
Be about 6 years old. At home during the night. Parents are not home. Grandmother's watching me. Parents come home. Rejoice. Go to sleep, wake up the next day and go outside. Playing around. Riding a four-wheeler. Whatever I did at that age. Notice the neighbor walking down the road. She's wearing the strangest clothes I have ever seen. Classic 50s poodle skirt. On her usual morning run to the store down the street for a Coke. Go inside and tell my parents that I had just seen the neighbor walking back to her house in the strangest clothes ever. They asked what she was wearing. Tell them. Parents begin to act very strangely. WTF.png. That's impossible. They had attended her funeral the night before, and I described what she was buried in. They didn't tell me about her death until that point because it would have been my first experience with death, and they weren't sure how I would have handled it. Reaffirms my belief that children see things that are and aren't there.
Yo X, so I just finished a very interesting work placement. I was given temp work in a tower in hell. Let me give you a little backstory. Go on a bar crawl with 3 friends, 4 of us hitting up bars all night, getting severely wasted as the night went on. 1 or 2 pints per bar sort of deal. It's about 11 when we hit out 4th bar. We're going for bars we normally wouldn't see or go to for that adventure vibe. We find the 4th bar is a sort of a Tudor-era building like Pick, but covered in soot. Go inside. Similar ritual. Drink, chat, then leave. As we're drinking, some guy comes up to our table, wearing a black coat, maybe a trench coat, but looked pretty nice, not leather, with a feathered collar and a large brimmed hat with a black feather. Don't know the name of them, but similar to pimp hats. Sits down and pulls out some dice and a cup, asks, "Any of you fellas fancy yourselves gambling men?" Has a really thick Texan accent. We're all relatively pissed, and I'm the only one who steps up to the challenge. Both of us bet on the outcome of the dice, 3 in total. If our chosen number is on 2 die, that person wins. We toss it around for a few rounds, going back and forth, winning and losing just a couple pounds here and there. I was up about 6 pounds by this point. My friends go up to the bar to get the next round of pints in. Gambler proposes we up the stakes. I win. I get his hat. It was a pretty dope hat. He wins. He gets me to do a few chores at his house for money. This was win. Win. I'm between employment, so some money in the pocket would be cool. Plus, if I won, dat hat. Dat hat. Long story short, I lose as the guy rolled triple threes. He just smiles, hands me a weird gold coin with a symbol on it and leaves. Confused, don't know where to go for his work, but just shrug it off. Friends get back, and we drink and continue our night. Wake up next morning and Sunday goes normally, despite being hungover. Monday is where it all kicked off, though. Get on bus into town to sort out meeting with JSA, paying no attention to anything but the emulator on my phone. It's getting surprisingly hot for a British winter. Music is kind of statusy at this point. One by one, people get off the bus stop by stop, till there are about 3 other on it. All this time, I've glanced out the window and not paid attention to the surroundings aside from checking where I am. That was stupid on my behalf, as I would have noticed sooner that I'd been going back and forth along the bus route. Static still getting louder on my phone. Chalk it up to shitty headphones. Look around at passengers, and it's just some really tall, skinny bastard with a hunch. A short girl wheezing every now and then with really greasy hair, and some guy reading a paper. Right now, the bus is going off the route down roads I've never even been down. Despite living in the city my whole life, bus stops, and on comes the gambler again, hat and all. He sits next to me, and the bus goes again. Sorry, boy, but a bet is a bet. Sure, you'll appreciate that. A little worried about the current events, and just ask what should I do to pay him for the bet. Just hop off when we get to my stop. Pass through a long tunnel, and suddenly the cloudy, raining city on one side changes to a sunset in the countryside. I'm resisting flipping out, and the gambler just speaks up. Settle down, boy. We'll be there soon enough. Look out into the dark sea motion, assume it's grass, examine further, and see that it's corpses, thousands of them, chained up and sort of floating and bobbing against each other, as if they were underwater struggling to get to the surface. They're so cramped together and waving in tandem like tall grass in the breeze. I literally cannot get this image out of my head. Whole shit, ton of nope.og. Just look at my knees for the rest of the ride. Bus stops and other passengers get off. Newspaper guy has huge scratch marks all over his face. Time's a wasting, boy. Don't keep you all waiting. He ushers me out of the bus, pointing his umbrella at the exit. I'm in a find of paralyzed shock, so I just follow obediently like a dog on a chain. Get off bus behind him, and he just says, "Boy, welcome to hell." I break out in a bit of a panic and start hyperventilating, spout out about what I did to go there. Why me? And it can't be my time yet. He tells me to relax, just fulfill my contract, and I'll be back in no time. He walks on, and I just follow him. We walked for a bit here, and there was some pretty crazy sights here, but that'll slow down the story, so I'll post them after if you're interested. After some time, get to his office building. It's immeasurably high, and pretty much appeared out of nowhere. Entrance is gourmand, has a fountain in the lobby as we walk in. Water doesn't look too good, more like pure oil with chunks in it. We take a lift up. You know that feeling where your mass sort of changes when in a lift? It was like that, but it was really strong. I had a slight headache by the end of it. We get off on a floor and the whole place is pure black. You couldn't even see the edges of walls as they met the floor. It looked like a void. The guy hands me a mop and bucket, and I pretty much get to work without question. The black stuff is kind of like a thick goo, but the mop seems to repel instantly and satisfyingly takes a good 3 hours or so, but bet it done. When I'm finished, go out on a balcony and have a smoke in a corner. I'm still kind of shit scared at this point. A little time passes and the gambler guy returns and thanks me for my work, and he takes me up a few more floors. This time the lift opens up to a field, kind of like one in the middle of the countryside. You can just see rows of grown vegetables evenly spaced. He hands me a basket. Fill it up. And careful, they can bite, get confused, but I'm still just in the state of wanting to just finish and go, so I oblige. It's a big field that stretches onwards for ages, with the only notable disruption aside from hedges seems to be the elevator shaft that just goes upwards endlessly. Start plucking vegetables, if you can call them that. They had green tops like plants, but when pulled out, the other half resembled a giant earthworm with a jagged, spiny jaw. They're alive and wriggling like crazy, trying to bit into my wrist. They can't quite reach, though a few bit into my hoodie and rip it a bit. Fill the basket, despite it taking 10 times longer than I thought. Basket was a lot bigger inside. Finish up, and then after 4 or 5 minutes, the gambler comes back. Good work, boy. Those things ain't the friendliest things. Ask him what this place is. This place? Why, this is a farm. But if you're thinking of the building, then you're in the Emporium Tower. He takes me to a few more floors, and I do some work that has somewhat bizarre of terrifying changes. Really, at this point, I thought it was only curiosity keeping me from going insane. Turns out it was that coin the guy gave me back in the bar. It was a seal of mines, he explained. Keeps you morts from going crazy if you hold on to one. The coin looked like this. If I recall, no idea of the symbol, but the gambler said it was important. Get back on the elevator, and it goes down for a change. Thanks for your help, boy. Something about you morts. You're a reliable bunch when needed. We reach the lobby again, and it's now full of strange and disturbing figures, of demons or hellspawn. They don't seem to pay attention to me, so I hide my fear as best I can. Gambler takes me out front, and the bus is sitting there. Now, boy, you just give that driver the coin and he'll take you straight back to your home. And before I forget, he gives me a small leather pouch and tells me to open it when I get back, and not before. That'll get you a favor with the boss when you see him. Board bus and sort of drift off to sleep involuntarily. After a long bus ride, I seem to wake up on the bus back like it was in the second post before it got warmer. Date and time are the same as when I was on in the first place. I sort of assume I just had a bad dream and go to my JSA meeting. But when I got home, I checked my bag, and sure enough, I found that little leather pouch. Inside was a small door key on a keychain, and the gambler guy said it will get me a favor. Any idea what this could be, or how I would keep the key on me when I die? Would I just have to have it in my possession? Or do I have to get it buried with me? Here is a picture of the key. Note, only the thumbnail data is saved on the archive. A full image is unavailable and lost to time. Sorry for the shit quality of the camera. The key have no distinguishing marks, and neither does the pouch.
The Riverman. A small bungalow stands alone by the riverbank. So the story goes, it was once one of several set up to house the elderly and the infirm. However, the council judged them to be too close to the water's edge, such that the structure's integrity would eventually be compromised. The residents were duly paid off and moved away, allowing the properties to be demolished. One resident, however, refused to move. He obstinately remains to this day, among the foundations of buildings sunken into the Miri and the encroaching reeds. The riverman himself is fairly squat, with a wrinkled neck and a hunched back, giving him the appearance of a turtle. He keeps to himself, a perpetual grimace on his face, his eyes hidden behind bottle-bottom glasses. He also wears an oversized rain hat, pulled down nearly to his eyeline. It's generally thought that he wears it to cover his embarrassment at the baldness that so often accompanies old age, but none have dared to pry. Whenever he heads into town, cane tapping before him, he dresses very well, albeit in an outdated fashion. Some speculate that his smart suit is evidence that he was once a man of means. Others suggest that it could have been his wedding attire, though none can recall him taking a wife. Perhaps her passing is the reason he's such a misery. He visits the supermarket once a week at exactly the same time, Sunday at 10 a.m. He then meanders to the fishing supply shop and picks up the various pieces of bait and equipment that he will need for the week. He maintains a positive relationship with the owner, though his odd behavior doesn't go unnoticed, eating his catches live, for example. The shop owner and some of the other older residents have a quiet respect for the man by the river, because of certain values he holds. He's a stickler for politeness, always addressing women as miss or ma'am, and men as sir, boys as young master. He's the first to hold open doors, though the withering grimace he levels at any that fail to thank him appropriately is enough to ensure that the same mistake isn't made twice. On a certain occasion, a local delinquent came in the bait shop and started bad-mouthing the customers, knocking the displays over and generally causing trouble. The Riverman shot him a dark look, and instantly the youth was upon him. He began hurling insults, mocking him and attempting to intimidate him. From beneath the rain hat, there came a demand that the boy respect his elders, or face the consequences. In response, the delinquent laughed in his face and attempted to knock his hat off his head. Before he could touch the brim, his wrist was wrapped in the Riverman's vice-like grip. The shocked youth attempted to jerk himself free, and finding that it was useless, swung a blow straight at the old man's head. The Riverman ducked the blow casually, brought the crook of his attacker's armpit over his shoulder, and neatly threw him onto his back. Then, with relaxed ease, placed a foot in the center of his chest. The boy squirmed, but was unable to dislodge him. Calmly, he was told to apologize and not to do it again. After much protesting and struggling, he eventually admitted defeat. Since then, neither he nor any others have troubled the elderly residents of the village. The shopkeeper thanked him for his intervention and offered to let the Riverman have his supplies for free from then on. The old man shook his head, saying that it wouldn't be proper, but that he was partial to a cucumber sandwich if the vendor had one to hand. Since then, each Sunday the pair would share sandwiches and tea when he came into the shop. Later, though, the shopkeeper would recall two strange things about the fracas. Firstly, there had been an odd sloshing sound whenever the old man moved sharply. Secondly, throughout, the Riverman somehow kept his head entirely level. The boy, on the other hand, swore blind that the only reason he apologized was that a monstrous look had come over the Riverman's face, and that he looked about ready to eat him whole. A rumor sprang up around the old man after that, presumably started by the shamed thug, that if you should hear a sloshing sound late at night down by the water, then the Riverman was waiting for a chance to eat you. Such nonsense is ignored by good children, though. After all, he's nothing but a polite old man, with an unusual love for cucumber sandwiches.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.